I'm going to show you how to remove a stuck filter from a lens. Hi, my name is Andy Nguyen. I'm a digital creative that specializes in online video for social media platforms. If you don't know what lens filters are, they attach onto the lens. There's a thread on the lens that the lens filter screws in on, and they can be a variety of filters. You could have a UV filter for some kind of protection. You have polarizers and neutral density filters for video. They're just pieces of glass that go in front of your lens to modify the image somewhat, or in case of the UV filter, protect it. I've been shooting for a few years, and since I started photography, there has been more than one occasion in which the filter was stuck to my lens. This can occur in a variety of ways. You can get some sand stuck in it, some dust, it can get cold, it can get hot. You don't really know that it's gonna happen until it happens. So it is best to be prepared. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're hard on your equipment. It's just sometimes a stroke of luck. One piece of dust or one grain of sand or something can get in there and mess everything up. And when it gets stuck, you're usually on the shoot or you're traveling or you're out and you may panic. The first and easiest and most straightforward way to fix this situation is to buy a filter wrench. And of course, if you have foresight and you prepare ahead of time and you have this in your bag, great for you. I was not that person. I am still not that person. I still don't own a filter wrench, even though I've gotten it stuck multiple times. So filter wrench essentially just grips the filter. It's like a clamp thing, I think. I'll show you an image of it. And you can twist the filter off pretty easily in most situations. But let's say you don't have a filter wrench. Although it's only a few bucks, I'm gonna assume that most people don't have one in their bag and they don't carry it on a regular basis. So the number one method to fix this situation is to use some rubber. No, not the rubber you're thinking of, a rubber band. So when filters get stuck, because of the thin nature, you don't want to have a thick lens filter that impedes your image. Because of the thin nature, it's hard to get a grip on it. You can use your fingers, but your fingers are slippery. It tends to be made of metal and can't really get a good grip on it. So you put a rubber band on there just to kind of get a grip on it. This rubber band's a little big, but you really just use a rubber band to go between your finger and the lens filter and just twist it off. Pretty straightforward, just twist it off. That will fix it in a situation where it's just kind of tight, maybe expanded or contracted from the temperature, but it's not always gonna work. So let's move on to method number two. Method number two was the craziest thing I heard of or read when I was a budding young photographer, but it is to use a shoe. It's the same kind of concept as method number one. This shoe is fresh from my shoe closet. You are figuring out a way to get a better grip on the lens filter that isn't just using your hands. I'll show you first without the shoe, then I'll do it. So you take the shoe and you apply force equally across the circumference, and that way you can twist the whole shoe, which is bigger than a lens filter, and the rubber sole of a shoe will grip onto the teeth of the lens filter and give you better leverage to take it off. And this is the method that was most accessible to me, mostly because I don't carry a rubber band around, and whenever I ask anyone for a rubber band, they give me a funny look because no one really carries them around. But a shoe, you should be wearing a shoe, I think, or someone you know has a shoe. Hopefully you are shoe wearing people. So you take the shoe, you stick a hand in it, make sure you wash your hands later, make sure you watch the filter later. But you take the lens, you apply the shoe like so, you push into it and twist. And that way, the lens filter will come off and it'll solve your situation. I don't have a stuck lens filter here, so this is all for demonstration. This will come off pretty easily. But it's a little gross, but it'll do the job. When you have a lens filter stuck in there, you just start freaking out. I started freaking out. I was thinking, what if this is stuck forever? I can't get it off. What if I have to take a tool to it and possibly break my lens? Let's start with the rubber band, then the shoe. Hopefully those work. So method number three, which as we go through the different methods, it gets a little more dangerous or a little bit more risky. So method number three is to freeze it. Often when something heats up, especially a metal, if you notice rubber balls in elementary school, on a hot day, they kind of expand because heat makes it expand. So the lens filter is expanding and kind of getting stuck in the lens. So what you would do is put it in a plastic bag, make sure there's no moisture inside, and then you throw it in the freezer for a little bit, hoping that the temperature drop will cause the lens filter to contract, and you can twist off the lens filter that way, perhaps using method 1 or 2. This is a risky method because you can possibly get moisture stuck inside your lens, and that's no good. But as you go through the methods, if you don't have a filter wrench available, you may have to try this. I have tried this in Spain when I had a stuck filter, but because of the nature of the stuck filter, the freezing didn't help. I tried the shoe, I tried the freezing, I tried just straight up elbow grease and just spending hours on it, and it didn't really fix the problem. So now we get to method number 4, and this is one of the most dangerous ones, but this is what actually solved my problem. This happened to me in Spain. So I was abroad, I didn't have access to Amazon Prime or really any camera store. So I had my GH5, I had it in my backpack, but for some reason I had the backpack open on a bed, which meant that it would be safe, but I didn't zip up the backpack, and I kind of like picked up the backpack and the lens and the camera fell out. So what I have right here on the GH5 is it's a lens adapter, lens filter holder. It's magnetic and there's a receiving end that attaches to the lens filter, but it's metal. It's like double layered metal with a magnet inside. Luckily for me, perhaps, when the camera dropped, it dropped lens first and the adapter took the brunt of the damage. Ended up getting pretty mangled in the process, and I have it right here. So I'll show you with, I'll use the camera to record it. So it looked pretty bad. So this is after I was messing around with it a little bit, but essentially the filter got bent inward. So essentially the lens filter got mangled up pretty bad. It took the brunt of the shock damage. So the GH5, luckily for me, was fine. It was properly functioning, but the lens filter got mangled up pretty badly. The lens filter took the brunt of the shock damage when it took the hit onto the tile floor. So the lens filter got bent inward. As it got bent inward, the interaction between the teeth of the lens filter and the lens didn't really match up anymore, so I couldn't get it off. And I tried all the methods of the rubber band, the shoe, freezing it, none of it worked because there was physical damage to my lens at this point. And with physical damage, you gotta move down the list and you end up doing number 4. So because of all the metal and the damage, I had to use some tools. I got a pair of pliers and another pair of pliers. Essentially, I had to go hard on this lens filter. So what I did was I took the lens off the camera just so it's a little bit easier to handle, and I used the pliers and I gripped just the lens filter. So if you have a regular lens filter and not just an adapter, if you look at this adapter, it's hollow. You can see right through it, it's very hollow. So if you have something with glass, I would advise finding a way to break through it, or you can try to grip around it, just because you need something for the pliers to grab onto. We'll reenact this a little bit. So you have the lens filter on top of the lens. What I did was I very carefully grabbed just the lens filter with the pliers, squeezed, and really, I had to be careful not to bend the lens, because if you do this incorrectly or you kind of rush it, you may damage the threads of the lens and you will never be able to put another lens filter on there again, which is scary because lenses are not cheap. They tend to be more expensive than the camera in most cases. So you really want to be careful. I didn't want to pay another professional to do this, so I did it myself. So you take the pliers, and in this situation, there's 2 layers. This filter holder has 2 layers. There's 2 metal layers with like a magnetic piece inside. I had to break through it. I had to use the thin pliers right here and then kind of like pull it inward. It was already bent a little bit inward, so I figured if I pulled it toward the center, I wouldn't damage the thread of the lens. I did this all after I got back to the States because I didn't have access to a pair of pliers in Spain. Luckily for me, I was able to, as you can see, this GH5 is still functioning. I was able to remove the lens filter. I still have the carcass right here to prove that it happened. After this video, I will finally dispose of it. But that is the worst case scenario. Ideally, get a filter wrench. To be honest, get a freaking filter wrench. It's $7 to $8, it's cheap, just to be prepared for the future. But if you don't have one, or you're stuck in a situation, you're off on a desert island and you need to fix your lens for some reason, and you have a pair of pliers, go to town on it. That'll work, but I can't guarantee it. I tried it, it worked for me, maybe it'll work for you. An honorable mention for methods to remove a lens filter. I saw online, someone mentioned to take a saw to the lens filter. Yeah, if someone's willing to do that, please report back to me, let me know how it goes. This is essentially the same process. I essentially disintegrated the lens filter by kind of chipping away at it, but I definitely am not handy enough to use a saw. So in conclusion, those are my methods. I've used all of them at one time or another, and the most dangerous, or the scariest one for me, was to use a set of pliers. And in conclusion, those are my methods to take care of a stuck filter on your lens without having to buy any specific equipment, unless you've never seen a shoe or a rubber band in your life. Some people don't have pliers, but remember these in the situation that you're stuck with a stuck lens filter and you don't have access to any tools. Let me know in the comments below your worst story about a stuck lens filter and how you got out of it. I would love to know new methods because I refuse to buy a filter wrench for some strange reason. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you've learned something today about stuck lens filters. Hopefully I can save you some grief in the future. And if you like this kind of content, please give me a like so I know. And again, talk about your stories down in the comments. And please subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Thank you and have a nice day. Bye!